Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I would like to warmly welcome you to our second annual summit on the global agenda, and I think which is already an achievement by itself to get together this second time. But before anything else, I would like to share with you also the greetings and best wishes of success of Professor Schwab, who is recovering from a chest infection and therefore is unfortunately not able to attend this summit. But he sends you his best greetings and is looking forward to meet you at a very soon other occasion. Rarely has there been a more crucial time for us to come together, and the fact that there is such a very high-level participation here is a remarkable testament to your commitment to meet global challenges in a more inclusive and more sustainable way. And for those who were with us last year, you might recall it felt a little bit like being hit by a truck because we were in the middle of the unfolding crisis, and I think you all did a remarkable job of trying to come up with ideas what is necessary to be done. But I think this year, with some time in between now, some further time of reflection, we are in an even better possibility, and we're really grateful to all of you to share with us your minds, your ideas to move forward. But I would also like to express my deep appreciation to His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, to Mohammed Al Abar, Chairman of Emir Properties and co-chair of this summit, and to the government of Dubai for being our wonderful host and partner. I think without this great partnership, this endeavor wouldn't have happened and would not be such a great start like it is today. This year, over 700 Global Agenda Council members from all disciplines and all stakeholder groups, and from over 60 countries representing 76 councils, are meeting here to address the most important challenges facing the world. The work we will undertake over the next few days, prepared in the virtual welcome meetings over the past weeks, shall define ideas and proposals on how to improve global cooperation in a collaborative, integrated, and actionable way. So you see, we're setting the bar very high, but I think having such an outstanding level of intelligence around us here, that would be the least we can do. So we're really looking forward to the outcomes of this meeting. Our work, integrated into a unique undertaking, the Global Redesign Initiative of the World Economic Forum, is the basis for recommendations from all stakeholder groups to be made to the international community at the annual meeting 2010 in close to Davos next January, which, by the way, will also be our 40th annual meeting. As we look ahead to a year of continued transformation, we must be both proactive and long-term oriented, combining the urgency of restoring growth in the global economy with the need to progress on long-standing global challenges and to create an objective of a sustainable future. And I count on all of you, the Global Agenda Council members, as well as the broader forum community, to advance the current work of the councils and help ensure that the world's leaders are best informed on the most pertinent actions in this very critical time in our history. Let us seize this opportunity at this annual summit to rethink, redesign, and rebuild the world with the kind of governance and leadership we have always aspired to have at the global, national, industry, and organizational level. The Forum has spent the last 8 months speaking to practically every G20 leader, as well as the heads of all major international organizations. And they unanimously support our work as being a critical addition to what is already being done in the international system. And they all eagerly await your findings. In addition to everyone in the Forum who is working with great passion on this initiative, I would like to take a short moment to present you some other colleagues But I would also like to point out how we believe that this initiative is really the most noble expression of our mission of improving the state of the world. So I would like to introduce two important contributors to this initiative from the forum. First, Lord Mark Malloch Brown. He is Senior Advisor of the Global Redesign Initiative, and in his advisory capacity, Lord Malloch Brown is responsible for following the work done inside the official international system and for ensuring that the Global Redesign Initiative proposals are integrated into the context of what is already being done on the international level. And second, Rick Sammons, Managing Director of the Forum, is leading the initiative from the Forum side and has been instrumental in designing the process for your contribution of the Global Agenda Councils to this initiative. There is tremendous potential for what the network of Global Agenda Councils can accomplish. And so I look forward to your continued engagement, and thank you for that. The results from our deliberations here are eagerly anticipated, as I mentioned already earlier, by the global community, and I hope that we can show not only our commitment, but also our capability to improve the state of the world. So I thank you already now for the work you will produce over the next days, and I can say I'm probably as curious as everyone in this room to see what we will be able to come up together and be able to contribute. Now, I would like to ask Lord Mark Malloch Brown to share the overall framework of this initiative with us all. So thank you very much. Lord Mark Brown.
Well, it's wonderful to see so many friends in the room today. What an extraordinary assembly this Dubai meeting is, and thank you very much to our hosts here for inviting us all to what really is an assembly where IQ is multiplied by experience, which in turn is multiplied by diversity. And if we can't get some good ideas out of this room, then I wonder where we can. If these remarks were to have a title to them, it might have been a story of two platforms. The first obvious platform is that of the World Economic Forum, which does, through meetings like this, offer a means to network, dialogue, test ideas, develop ideas between us. But the second platform is that burning platform, which last year was really alight as you met here, where the sense of impending global financial disaster was very real, very immediate. And of course, this year you could either argue that we have the perspective now of being able to look at those events with a little bit more distance and take account of what they mean in terms of improving the way we govern global affairs, financial and others. Or you might argue that, well, we survived the crisis, it's back to something like business as usual. Now, I'm sure the business as usual crowd is underrepresented in this room, because I think probably what spurred us all to come here for a weekend amidst very busy lives is this sense that the crisis isn't behind us, that what happened last year is perhaps a symptom of a broader dysfunctionality in our global political economy and political society, where increasingly, as our national structures struggle to deal with problems which are ever more global and interrelated in character, we're seeing failure after failure to rise to the occasion, to find solutions which really address the problems with a sufficient scale and understanding of their complexity and of their global character. And so I hope, as we look not just at the financial issues, but way beyond that, at issues of health and development, at issues of weak states, at issues of human rights breakdowns around the world, that we'll understand that almost none of these problems are any more just national in character. Even the issues of failed states, which might seem to be a tragedy for those trapped in them, but to have little broader ramification beyond that, have truly got into the global bloodstream, and whether it is the continuing problems with Afghanistan, spurred obviously by the events of 9/11 originally, there is time after time, whether through migration flows, whether through drawing international security crises as a consequence of some small initial breakdown in a small state in one corner of the world, what we are seeing time after time is the globalization of problems. And it's that which led Klaus Schwab to say, I think, that at the time of the 40th anniversary of the Forum, in the light of the financial crisis of last year, now was a time for him and his colleagues to use the Forum on behalf of all of you here, but the broader membership, to see whether we couldn't use it as a platform to develop thinking and ideas about how we might address the gaps and breakdowns in global governance. Now, let me immediately say that the ideas that many of you have been working on since last year go wider than this. Not everything is global. Certainly not everything lends itself to a solution provided by stronger global institutions. But a huge amount does. And we want to make sure that in addition to the continuing work of your Global Agenda Council, we try to capture that global piece, if you like, that piece which can shape and affect the nature of global institutions in the future. Now, just a word about why we think that this World Economic Forum platform is such a powerful one for this. I spent the earlier part of this year as my Prime Minister Gordon Brown's envoy for helping set up the G20 meeting that we held in London. And certainly for me, it was a long overdue change from G8 to G20, one that within the UN I had argued for many years. But I also saw the difficulties of a format like the G20, which actually is closer to G30, if truth be told. And it's to do with the struggle to get out the communique, with the process that dominates it, with the constant attention to not just communique writing alone, but to making sure that the communique has got lots of headline-driven pieces in it. The complete lack of time or ability to think in a more reflective way about the long-term structural and strategic problems that underlie the crisis. Instead, it is, crisis fighting at a very high level, but nevertheless one where everyone who participates in it yearns for the more reflective opportunity that a meeting like this provides. And I think the more thoughtful government representatives in forums like the G20 also yearn for views which could be fed into the process, which are broader than just a conversation between government officials. They seek the views of business, they seek the views of academics and think tanks, they seek the views of civil society, because there is an understanding that these G20 arrangements or those of other intergovernmental processes must reflect an understanding from the bottom up of what the problems are that we're trying to correct. And I think that is the link, the gear that a meeting such as this can provide. Now, it's very difficult in the crammed process even of this, of 2 days together, supported by electronic contact before and after, to develop proposals of great depth and coherence. Even here, there are limitations, even if they are limitations that G20 Sherpas would die for. It is nevertheless still a constrained process. And I think in that sense, we mustn't let the process defeat the originality. We must make sure that big ideas come out of this, occasionally, even more powerfully, small and incremental ideas, which through people in this room's knowledge of individual situations are potentially revolutionary because they can break deadlocks, they can move issues like financial regulation a jot or two forward, which may in the longer term circumstances be the most we can do now, but may have really dramatic implications for the future. And what I think we certainly need to avoid is that often simplistic conclusion that every big new international problem that we identify needs a big new international agency to solve it. I think we are seeing the linkages between problems, that crises in energy, food, water have interrelationships, and while there are some things that should be done sector by sector, there are other things that need to be done in a more integrated, cross-sectoral way. We're certainly seeing that not every problem is amenable to a large global regulatory agency, that many problems need the operational energy of public-private partnerships, which command and marshal the resources to, in an operational way, address problems. There's no regulation to stop poverty. But there's a hell of a lot of development work that can be done by the private as well as the public sector, which can make a huge dent on the issue of global poverty. Secondly, I think we understand that we must rely more on networks. For those of us who come from UN backgrounds, the constant effort to reach beyond our own silo, to build links with other organizations, to find those cross-sectoral ways of working, those partnerships, is, I think, key to international action in this century. We need to understand which problems are amenable to global regulatory arrangements, which, by contrast, need a real operational push. We need to think about the sort of variable geometry and representation of governments and other actors and stakeholders in any new international arrangements we might think of recommending. Who needs to be at the table? This issue dogs almost every international discussion now, with universality providing the ultimate legitimacy, the General Assembly approach of the United Nations, if you like, but with social science warning us that every person you add to a discussion beyond about 12 or 15 reduces the effectiveness of that group to come to clear, effective solutions. So we see, whether it is in an expansion of the Security Council, the membership of the G20, the membership of the MEF, or of other groupings, this constant struggle for the need to get more people at the table to make a grouping representative and legitimate, while at the same time the continuous danger that you crowd the table so much that you lose the quality of the discussion and of the subsequent decision making. So we, I think, have to move to a situation where problems assemble the right people at the table, where if this is not universal, it enjoys some kind of blessing from the United Nations or link to the United Nations or some other arrangement to ensure that there is global buy-in, where we understand what are global decision-making bodies and what are just ad hoc information-sharing bodies, advocacy groups, lobby groups. And one thing I've argued for very strongly is that the G20 not make the mistake of the G8 before it and set itself up as somehow the global economic decision maker. It isn't. That authority rests in different international institutions. So again, I think we need to, as we develop proposals in this area, think carefully of what is the right way to govern the global activities that we feel and believe need better governing. Now, as you will hear in a moment from Rick Salmons, while you, the Global Agenda Councils, are at the intellectual heart of this exercise of the GRI, there's input from others as well, from our industry partnerships who are doing fantastic work in their different sectors around their own global agendas, from our extraordinary young global leaders who are agitating around most of the same issues that you're meeting around and don't doubt for a moment that when you put your findings on Wellcome, the first ones to criticize you for not going far enough will be the young global leaders who are a kind of demographic agitprop to these proceedings. And I'm glad that quite a few of them are here with us and participating in the different groups. We've already, through different forum meetings, through country hearings in Switzerland and Qatar, and in a few weeks' time in Singapore, through regional meetings in India, through the Summer Davos in China, and through a regional meeting in South Africa just a couple of months ago, we have begun to collect and collate proposals and ideas. But this is at the heart of it, and Rick will explain the process and why. But let me just finish by saying that while there is to be a GAC report, and there will be a GRI report early next year, the Global Redesign Initiative report, I myself do not think the power of this work lies in another report to add to the already groaning bookshelves of reports on international reform. The power of this idea is that people will take up some of these proposals, government leaders, business leaders, others, and campaign for them. Pick them up and run with them in the course of 2010, 2011. And the one thing I've noticed as an attender at the WEF over quite a few years now is that so many of the best things to come out of the WEF, years later, people barely remember that that's where they begun. Because they outgrow the nesting or nurturing or nursery process that the WEF can provide, and become fully formed institutions and ideas on their own, things like the Global Fund, and many other initiatives in the public health area and in higher education and other issues. And I hope here too that in a few years' time, when we see some reforms in how we deal with international security or financial or development issues, or as we see hopefully the emergence of some more universal values to govern how we behave around international issues, that we'll have to remind people that that started in Dubai at the WEF. Because the power of the really good ideas is over time they will get a life of their own and a legitimacy of their own, and people will forget where they began. Thank you.
I would like to invite now Rick Sammons to share with us the process and how we will do this following 2 days. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Andre, and thank you very much as well, the government of Dubai, for this extraordinary partnership. My job for the next few minutes is to give you a sense of the process that we envision going forward, full well knowing that in this nursery that Mark has described, there are a lot of independent spirits and a lot of interesting different colored eggs that are about to be put into the nest. First, I want to just indicate to you that there is this Global Agenda Council structure or platform is a long-term investment of the forum. We view it as an integral part of this diverse set of networks and communities that the forum has been cultivating for now almost 40 years. When we came together last year for the first time physically in the councils, as many of you will recall since you were here last year, we had indicated that what we intended by creating then about 50 or so diverse, multi-stakeholder, interdisciplinary groups of experts on different topics was to create a platform for you to interact continuously, virtually over time, as you see fit, as you think would most benefit progress in your particular domain. And that remains the fundamental long-term purpose of these councils. It is very much a Web 2.0 philosophy where it's driven by you to determine how best to use this particular network. Now, having said that, we this year want to issue a particular challenge in light of the context that Mark has just described. You know, coming out of the crisis, I think there's a sense that the world was not well served by a significant degree of complacency about risk accumulating in a variety of domains. And that while we've been told for years, including by many, if not most of you in your particular issue areas, of the inadequacy of the structures of international cooperation in light of contemporary circumstances and in light of accumulating problems and risks, there has been a large measure of inertia, shall we say, in the international system. And the crisis really served us a very hard lesson of the costs of that complacency, and at least related to a couple of areas of cooperation that was inadequate and out of sync with the degree of interdependence that evolved over the past 10 or 20 years, financial supervision and macroeconomic cooperation. But I think we would all agree that the larger lesson from the crisis is that we would be well advised to re-examine our complacency about similar structural weaknesses in the international system and corresponding or analogous accumulating risks in other issue areas. And so for this year, for purposes of this meeting this year, and for the cycle that you're involved in this year in particular, we want to issue a special challenge to you that among your discussions, and your discussions can take many forms and your forms of cooperation can take many forms, but we're challenging you that perhaps that among those discussions, you might want to focus on seeing whether you would like to collectively integrate your thoughts and propose some particular solutions or particular approaches to improve the structures of international cooperation in your domain. This is, in essence, what we're referring to when we're talking about the Global Redesign Initiative. This Global Redesign Initiative for the Forum is basically a large 2-year multi-stakeholder global dialogue about this very question. Where are there some structural weaknesses that might be remedied? And what are some specific ideas that could be put on the table that would sharpen the dialogue and debate among all stakeholders, but particularly among the intergovernmental community? And that's why we're placing an emphasis on this Global Redesign Initiative here in your council deliberations. Again, I want to emphasize, this is not to the exclusion of whatever you want to discuss and whatever modes of cooperation you're already developing. Many of you have already collaborated on some publications of various types. A number of you are engaging in some advocacy activities as you see fit. That should well go forward. Again, I emphasize that the councils are a long-term investment of the Forum in improving connectivity across and among experts from different disciplines in different regions and different stakeholder groups. But we think that this moment in the evolution of international relations presents itself for a very interesting opportunity for informal networks of expertise to sharpen their suggestions for decision makers, put them on the table, and engage those decision makers. Because indeed, one gets the impression that decision makers have been put back on their heels a little bit. I think we've all been reassessing our frame of reference about what is and is not feasible, what is and is not politically desirable, politically achievable, and what is and is not the obligation we hold to our fellow citizens in other regions and to future generations to come. So with that, let me talk a little bit about the process going forward in this Global Redesign Initiative. This is a process which benefits from the blessing, the patronage, if you will, of 4 governments, small but very internationally minded and open governments, Qatar, Singapore, Switzerland, and Tanzania. And there will be a 5th we anticipate from the Western Hemisphere. So this is an informal process, but it's one that has the attention and the blessing of the intergovernmental community, at least at a start, in the form of these patron governments. What we hope to do out of this 2-year dialogue is to nurture a set of concrete ideas, largely coming from you, Global Agenda Councils, but also from other communities of the Forum, as Mark has just mentioned. And what we intend to do with that set of ideas is, in the midst of the dialogue, in April of next year, to distill the most significant and promising and concrete of your proposals for how, not necessarily what needs to happen, but how one might improve international cooperative structures or arrangements, put that together in a series of proposals that are in the name of you, your councils. On top of that, add some institutional systemic observations and suggestions on the part of the forum in our institutional voice, and put that on the table for discussion with the intergovernmental community and the media and society at large as we continue the dialogue throughout 2010. Our aim here is to raise the ambition level of governments, but all stakeholders, to see beyond the inertia and the complacency and to see whether, in fact, we not only have a desire to strengthen the international system, but there are some concrete, actionable opportunities to do so that are structural as opposed to purely incremental. We're encouraging you as you deliberate not simply to look at what is achievable in the current political cycle, but really asking you to take a more strategic look. What are some structural gaps and weaknesses in how the world organizes itself in your particular domains, and what structural improvements would you suggest be made, and how, over the medium to long term, if we're to better make the international system fit for the purpose of dealing with contemporary risks and challenges as opposed to those that existed 50 or 60 years ago when the principal features of the international system were developed in the aftermath of World War II. Beyond that meeting, that report that we will come out with in late April of next year will be the subject of a special intergovernmental and multi-stakeholder meeting in which we'll bring many of you into direct conversation with governmental decision makers and others. That'll occur in Qatar. Beyond that, we will engage in a continuing process to refine the proposals in dialogue with your peers across many different councils, and in dialogue with governments and other decision makers, and in our regional summits throughout 2010, and in a wider conversation with the public through the application of interactive new media, as well as traditional media. Now, what does that mean for us here this week? I'd like to just maybe indicate a couple of things. There are a few things that are new as compared to last year, and then identify a few of the key things that are expected from you as council members over the next couple of days. What's new is that we have expanded by about 50% the number of Global Agenda councils. Secondly, we have worked hard, although this is still a work in process, to increase the diversity of the membership of the councils. Now we've got about a third of you from Europe, a third from North America, 20% from Asia, and the remainder from other regions of the world, which represents progress over last year, although it's still a work in progress. And in fact, we've made a conscious effort to try to attract to the chairman and vice chairman posts of the council as many Asian leaders and thinkers as possible. Secondly, we have made progress with the development of our Welcome platform. That's to say, our custom-designed electronic interactive platform that is put at the disposal of all of you. I'm happy to say that now we've got a functioning individual welcome pages for each council, and this is the medium, the principal medium by which you will be able to collaborate with your peers over time. And when I say peers, I mean particularly those of your fellow council members, because whatever you're developing on paper, now you can work on together on that page, and you can have a continuous dialogue and comment process, but also with the broader set of your peers. This device, this Welcome device, enables us to have a very robust peer review process across time and space in a way that is much more difficult to do through traditional formal measures of interaction. Thirdly, we have built into this particular meeting here in Dubai some additional cross-council opportunity for conversation. We heard from you last year that one of the most interesting aspects of your time here that you didn't get enough of was the opportunity to connect dots with people working on other issue areas. So you'll notice in the program that there are 3 dedicated sessions, each with a slightly different geometry, for you to interact with people outside your council, in addition to 2 very long and deep segments for you to do your work inside your councils. Now, what we expect from you here, what we particularly want to challenge you to accomplish are two basic written outputs. And what I'm talking about is to make progress toward these two written outputs. They're not all due necessarily while we're here. First, like last year, we wish to ask you to develop a draft by the end of the meeting of a two-pager that essentially captures the nature of the issues you are discussing, the priorities that you've identified, and to the extent that your council is coalescing around the development of a proposal or two of the nature I described to improve international cooperative arrangements or structures that may get wrapped into this global redesign initiative written output to the international community next spring to describe that. The purpose of this two-pager is to provide effectively an executive summary or executive memo to Davos participants, to give them an opportunity to see what you're coming up with, and to, very importantly, to get back to you through the welcome system with any suggestions or comments or reality checks they might provide. So that's a very important summary deliverable of weight, but it's very short and therefore should be easy to accomplish with the help of your particular forum council manager, the forum staffer that's attached to your council. Again, we'd like that, the first draft by the end of the week here, and then that'll be posted on your welcome page and give an opportunity for some refinement and comment by people that were here but also not here this week. And then we will issue this in the form of a book of these executive memos to all participants in the forum's annual meeting in Davos in January of next year. The second written output that's expected to you has a longer time frame on it. And that is, again, for the subset of you that have identified particular concrete ideas that you're developing well-written proposals on to improve international cooperative arrangements or structures, the how rather than just the what. We would like to see your first draft by mid-December. That would enable us to be able to use it as a basis for discussion in a number of sessions that we're designing, maybe a third of the entire program in Davos, in fact, on your issue and your ideas, because this leader gathering in Davos is a unique opportunity to get some high-level feedback and input while you're still in your formative process. And so, again, for the group of you that are developing these proposals, we would like to see that by mid-December. That would put us in a position to help frame those discussions and provide that discussion basis in Davos. Now, the idea would be, following Davos, that you would hold a virtual meeting in February at which you would take on board all of the comment that's been received via welcome by your peers, both in your council and across the GAC community, as well as from leaders in Davos, and to finalize those proposals to the extent they're ready for finalization for production in April of next year. Now, I want to emphasize here that this is an ongoing process. We would anticipate many of these proposals, although they may be put on the table in April, they may not be completely finished. And in fact, that's the purpose of the discussions in April of next year. And indeed, there may be additional ideas that surface later in 2010. And so the process remains open in that regard. It's a rolling, living process. Now, as far as your meetings here, we would like you today, later in your first sessions, to fix, if possible, specifically what ideas you're going to collaborate on. You've got a couple and a half, 3 hours scheduled for your intra-council discussions, and that's an important to-do for you. Secondly, tomorrow you're going to meet at the very beginning of the day to determine what your outreach strategy would be with respect to these cross-council conversations. Which people, which councils do you want to send emissaries out to ask questions or to get some feedback? And then after that, an initial period of this individual council fair process, it's more like a marketplace individually for you to go around and have individual conversations. We'll have a segment where we match two councils together in 2 one-hour segments, splitting the councils in half. So in effect, you've got 4 cross-council planned structured interactions for 1 hour, where you can get more deeply into the comment process and the connecting the dots process among you. Then, after a lunch, a networking lunch, you'll go back into an intra-council discussion, a deep discussion about what all you've learned and what it implies for your work going forward, for your agenda, for the cooperation you're undertaking generally, or with respect to the proposals you're trying to innovate to contribute to this global redesign initiative. And then, at the end of the day tomorrow, your chairs and vice chairs will gather, and they will have a bit of a discussion within clusters that we've arbitrarily identified. We've categorized you according to certain clusters, and you'll forgive us for making some arbitrary decisions about that, but we needed to divide you up in some fashion. Your chairs and vice chairs will come together and discuss their strategy for what 5 proposals they want to put on the table on Sunday morning for a cluster-wide discussion. And these are not necessarily the best proposals, but that the proposals that are either would benefit by a broader conversation and a broader degree of feedback and input by the cluster, or those that have potential for significant impact and therefore ought to be brought to the attention of the entire group. And so that will be their job to determine what those 5 proposals will be. And then in addition, in that Sunday morning 3-hour segment, to having a discussion about those 5 proposals and getting that additional feedback, there'll be a segment at the end, nearly an hour, where we are inviting you to have a wider discussion about the systemic implications for these proposals, some cross-cutting linkages that ought to be explored, maybe some other types of proposals or cooperations that ought to be undertaken, or what is needed in the ecosystem of cooperation and action by other sectors of the system to make some of your proposals fly. And then we'll close the meeting about midday on Sunday. Now, I want to emphasize here that we are not asking you to develop proposals about what the forum should do. We're a platform, we're a facilitator, we're not a decision-making body. If you have some suggestions in your discussions for what the forum's agenda ought to be, or projects that we undertake, that's fine, that's fair game. But the fundamental challenge we're issuing to you, the opportunity you have through this process, is to make some focused suggestions to the international community in areas that would strengthen the international system. And I also want to emphasize that we're not necessarily expecting that you have to create a brand new idea or a brand new proposal. Indeed, there may well be initiatives or exercises underway which you think deserve a greater degree of support or need to be combined with other elements or need to have some added resourcing in order to have a strong impact. That is entirely fair game for what we think we ought to be proposing and putting on the table to the international community as ideas to strengthen the international system. Now last, maybe just a reflection back on the entire context. 2 things. One, reemphasize that USGACs determine your own agendas. We encourage you to develop these kinds of international cooperation and governance ideas, but to the extent that you don't, it's understandable. Many of you are working on topics that are not particularly conducive to that. That's fine. You go forward with your agendas. But for many of you, we hope to see some concrete ideas in this regard. And last, there is a lot of cynicism about. We've had a lot of conversations with governments around the world at a high level, and all of them are very comfortable with what we're doing, in the sense that they see the complementarity between a longer-term strategic think about the adequacy of the international architecture on the one hand, and the near-term work that they're doing in response to the crisis or immediate political problems and domestic problems. They're very comfortable with that, and they're increasingly comfortable with the idea of the informal community coming together on a global basis to make suggestions to decision makers. But as you can imagine, maybe even here within the room, there's probably some cynicism and skepticism many of these issues have been talked to death for years. There have been a lot of blue ribbon task forces over the years that have developed ideas to modest success and effect at best. But I'm struck, and I'd like to leave you with this thought, that I think the world is in a crazy idea period. I think that people's foundations have been shaken considerably by the failures that have been in evidence in the last year or two. And I never would have expected that 5% of global GDP would have been allocated to financial system rescuing, as has happened. I would never have expected major economies to be running double-digit as a percent of GDP fiscal deficits as far as the eye can see in this regard. Much of that spending is on social spending, and a lot of it's on environmental spending to try to green economies. 5 years ago, this would have been unthought of. People talk for years about trying to break the grip of the G8's hold on decision-making in international economic affairs, and yet, almost with a wave of a wand, we've moved to a much wider, maybe still imperfect, but a much wider configuration for top decision-making in this regard. there's unprecedented public ownership now in the economy, in many economies around the world that would have been unthought of even 2 or 3 years ago. I think we're at a time where people realize that our frame of reference needs to be adjusted. And therefore, I do think that this is the right moment to be asking you these more structural, strategic, longer-term questions. And we may be surprised. There may be more of a marketplace for your ideas than one would imagine just looking in the rearview mirror at the history of discussion and idea generation on global governance matters. So with that, I merely want to welcome you. Thank you very much again for the time and commitment that you're displaying by being here. And I hope that you find this process intellectually stimulating, but also productive. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Rick Simmons. I would like to present now Mohammed Alabar, Chairman of Emaar Properties and co-chair of this summit, which we are very pleased to have here with us to share with us his thoughts at this opening plenary. But let me just quickly give some further elements on his really outstanding track record. He's also chairman of the Advisory Council, a high-level Dubai government economic advisory board that is mandated to review and ensure the long-term stability and growth of key sectors of the economy. He serves on the board of directors of the Investment Corporation of Dubai, the investment arm of the government of Dubai, and he is chairman of the Bahrain-based Al Salam Bank, an Islamic bank with corporates across the MENA region. Mr. Alabar is also a board member of the Noor Investment Group, an affiliate of the Dubai Group, the leading diversified financial company of Dubai Holding. I'm very pleased to invite now Mr. Alabar to share with us his views and outlooks on the summit and his expectations of the outcome. So thank you very much to be with us, Mr. Alabar.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take this opportunity to say good morning and welcome to the city of Dubai. We would like to welcome you during this very interesting time of the year for the city because you know well, we live in the desert and our weather nice and harsh in some time and it's beautiful in other times like what we see nowadays. So, of course, it's an honor to have all of you with us. I'm really sorry to say that Professor Schwab is not with us, but I'm glad he's doing well on the road of recovery, thank God. It's really a pleasant surprise to see so many familiar faces, many colleagues that we've spent time with last year. I still see them around. I think it's really fabulous that you know, if you think of it, this is really the greatest, most powerful brainstorming session in the world. When you look at the names and the people who are attending and their capabilities in their own field, it's just fabulous to have people here in our city for a few days to brainstorm and touch on issues that are so critical to your own field, but they are so critical to the well-being of the world, of course. Which we all remember that when we met here last year, I would say that we were all in the eye of the storm. You know, we were just hit by the crisis and people trying to find their way around, trying to understand facts. And I always say that it was similar to somebody looking at the picture so close to your face. And I think maybe this year we are a bit wiser. We've learned so much more. We are able to maybe understand a little better. And probably give better advice if we can in our own field. So again and again, I really would like to thank all of you for taking the time from your busy schedules to fly all the way and participate in this fabulous gathering. And here I would like to thank my colleagues in the World Economic Forum for working together with us to put this gathering. I also would like to thank my friends in the government of Dubai for also working day and night with the World Economic Forum, boys and girls, to make this happen. So again, welcome to the city of Dubai. I must say that the past 12 months have been quite painful months. And many people, of course, try to really get to the bottom of issues. Some people have ideas of what exactly was going on, but the truth is that we did our best, but still we are going through the storm. People believe that maybe stability is within reach. Others, as you rightly mentioned, is that they think that we need to stop and watch. But I have no doubt that this year we will be in a much better position to really give better advice on what next year is going to look like and the years ahead, and the suggestions of how to sort out some of the issues in different fields. But unfortunately, this year we are sitting looking at the world with government debts in the trillions. We know very well that unemployment is not in best shape. We all know that banks are not in good shape. That's a fact. Where last year we are forecasting, expecting, but that's all on the table now, expectation that it's stabilizing, or we might be faced with other serious issues. But you know what's really unfortunate, many of you, and I think I ask myself this question, is that, you know, with all the intelligence and all the brilliance in the world, you know, how come that passed all of us? How come we really didn't take any notes, any possible hints that there will be a serious matter? And I'm sure that in the World Economic Forum, people in the past have touched on this, but I think, you know, we're all going through the boom time. Nobody really took a serious note of that. But then again, that is something that we are facing today. We are learning. I think our minds are much better to deal with it today, especially with the group that we have here. But if I were to come back and look at the Middle East, it's very interesting when you look at the Middle East. The crisis have affected the Middle East, of course, because we're part of the global economy and we're all connected. But there's of course a big difference in there. Even though we are part of the global scene, we're used to wars, we're used to conflicts, but we are not used to financial crisis, economic crisis. I mean, the world have seen the Great Depression, Asia have seen economic crisis, but this part of the world understand Iran-Iraq war, understand Israeli-Palestinian war, understand Afghanistan wars, Iraq occupation of Kuwait, but we really did not face anything as serious as this. But you must keep in mind that as we face that, that's also a challenge for our own institutions, government or private sector, to be able to deal, because the experience is very small in dealing with such matters. Of course, that will take me straight away to this city that I live in and work in. The city of Dubai itself have been in the news for many years, and of course it was the darling of the news. It was all incredible stories coming out of the city of Dubai and the United Arab Emirates, but also during the crisis we were also in the news. And unfortunately, some of my colleagues in the media have crossed the lines in many of their comments. I understand some of them are sitting in overseas cities that have taken some serious comments and concern over the viability of the city and the optimism of the city. So I ran into a gentleman who's in the media, and I said, you know, I understand that we believe in transparency, we believe in freedom of press, but you know, this is really, you know, crossing the lines. He says, Mohammed, you're a good friend of mine. Let me tell you this. Dubai bad story sells. But Dubai good story also sells. So it's the time of selling. I said, well, fine. I do understand. I just hope you encourage your people to come and look at the city, just in case as we go through. But I would like to say and reiterate that it's all about leadership. The leadership of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the Vice President, the Prime Minister of the UAE, and the ruler of Dubai, is, you know, he's steadfast, and himself and our team is confident of the stability of the city and the growth that the city was built on, mainly because we are the hub for over 300 million people. It's as simple as that. And a lot of time I give the example is that, you know, the United States, Europe are about 300 million people, but each country, I mean, the EU and the US, they've got about 9 hubs. I mean, Chicago, Los Angeles, London, while the Middle East and our region has only one hub, and that is Dubai is the hub. I hope Qatar becomes a hub. I hope Abu Dhabi becomes a hub, but definitely this city is way ahead of everybody. As a result, of course, the government of Dubai have paid some of its debt, more than $10 billion during the year. Of course, the population in the city have grown by, during the past 12 months, by 400,000 people, and that is 5 times the number of people who moved into the state of Florida during the boom time. Airport arrival in the city just ended. Statistics came out. I think it's in the newspaper this morning. It's probably rated the highest growing airport on earth. Still is. Still, some of the infrastructure projects are still going on. Of course, the city have delivered its first driverless metro, which got inaugurated only a few months back, which is really one of the most advanced on earth. I'm very proud to say that the Burj, which is really the tallest structure building ever built by man, is opening on the 4th of January. And just to tell you a simple story is that I think the tall building that's we finished here in Dubai, I think it's an incredible achievement of humanity, because if you look at this building, it's designed in Chicago, it's built by Samsung. It has 12,000 people working from 40 countries. We push technology and human ability to beyond limits to be able to build something of such quality and such incredible engineering. And I'm really happy that I think there's some people who went to the 124th floor yesterday observatory, and I just want to tell you that the building goes above you, probably another 55 story from there. So still activity are still going on in the city. And again, we will say that yes, we are affected by what's going on in the world. We used to grow 14% of GDP. We'll probably grow 5% GDP this year. So still the effect is there, but the city is moving quite well. Now, while we're looking internally, I think the city is still very, very active on the outside. So Dubai Care Program, which is the charitable arm of the government, is doing incredible work. It's interesting that while we're here, we've got UAE citizens doing a program on the beach, I think not far from here, under Dubai Care, where we've got citizens who are walking 3-kilometer walk, water bucket walk, we call it, where basically, we train and we let our people feel how it feels for the young poor looking for water in Africa or in Asia who walk kilometers and kilometers. Again, Dubai Care have done an incredible amount of work in education in Africa and Asia the past year. Of course, we do all that because we truly believe that we are the hub for over 300 million people in the region. Now, if you were to look at what's going on in the region and compare it to what's going on in the world, of course, unfortunately, is in trouble because government debts are out of control, banking is at risk, consumer debt is very, very high, unemployment, of course, is high. And in many of these issues, the Middle East is not. Balance sheets of governments is strong. Lending to consumers is very tight. By the way, we have practically no mortgage lending in the Middle East as a whole because, thank God, the mortgage laws didn't come out yet. So the Middle East will really benefit, unfortunately, from the crisis to build much better system. Therefore, I think governments are really in good shape, economies are in good shape, still affected by what's going on in the world. So if you ask me in general, I will tell you that we in the Middle East are in a much better shape. GDP is still growing positive. The truth is that we all share with the world the same issues. Poverty is an issue. Unemployment is an issue. Women participation for us is an issue. Conflict is an issue. Education is not good. Infrastructure is not good. People participation is not good. Healthcare is at risk. So aside from budgets and economic issues, the real core of what a society depends on to move forward, it's global. It's the same issues that we all have to basically participate and and look for solution, because we are part of one world and we all get affected by same issues. And I just would like to say one thing is that many of the speakers ahead of me have spoken about format, ideas, recommendations, good ideas that are coming out and how it's going to be implemented, and we spoke about United Nations a little bit. But I really think that good recommendation, it is good for responsible politicians, responsible business leaders to take them forward. I don't think we can force our agenda on people, except we need to promote it, and it is for those responsible people on earth, no matter how small or big, that they should take it forward, especially after the big shakeup that we've gone through the past, I would say, even 24 months. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen, that as you sit in here, I would like you to know that we participate fully in the global economy. We face the same challenges in the Middle East or in Africa or in the States or in Europe. So we are an integral part of what's happening, and we share all views. Of course, because of that, no doubt, is that our concern is hunger, our concern is literacy, disease, water, climate change. We all live on the same planet, and we all share all these issues. Therefore, as we have the greatest thinkers and business leaders with us here, my humble suggestion is that please keep in mind that as you look at all the issues that you have in hand and how to basically put recommendation forward, I just have 3 questions that I would like to leave with you, ladies and gentlemen, is that as you really go through your sessions, remember these three questions that I have in mind. That if you were a citizen of a different nation, not your own, would your conclusion be any different? And the second question I have is that if you were out of work, poor and uneducated, would your decisions be just? Do you think the decision that you come out of in your session, they'll be just if you are unemployed, uneducated? And the third, truly, will your ideas and recommendation improve the state of the world? Not only your own country or not only your own company. And I must say that last year I participated in the real estate session. It was fabulous. Great minds, great conclusion, a bit of confusion as well, because last year it was pretty confusing. And I hope more confusion this year as well, because that makes us work much harder. So at the end, I would like to say that I thank you again, the World Economic Forum, for participating with us. I would like to thank my colleagues in the government of Dubai again, but most importantly, I would like to thank all of you for taking the time to come and be with us. I do have hope that you have productive meetings while you're here in Dubai, in this incredible brainstorming session. And I hope you have a little bit of time to walk around the city if you have time, just to see its vibrancy and energy. And I wish all of you a safe trip home when you decide to go home. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.